Story 1. The Puppet Master's Revenge. The ones you underestimate may hold all the power. Lucas had always been the quiet one, the unassuming nephew in a family that thrived on appearances. For 5 years he endured their whispers, their taunts about his broke lifestyle, their smug indulgences, all while secretly funding their extravagant lives. But that night at the family dinner, something changed. His aunt's words, "You'll always be a worthless nobody," were the final crack in the dam. That night, Lucas sat at his desk, opening his laptop to review the financial documents he had meticulously maintained. Every mortgage payment, every credit card bill, every luxury they flaunted, it was all coming from the trust fund his late parents had left behind. And he, the supposed nobody, was the one managing it. He made a single call to his financial advisor. Freeze all payments immediately. The fallout was immediate. His aunt woke up to an overdraft notice. His uncle's golf club membership was revoked. His cousin's credit cards were declined at the mall. The vacation they had so proudly planned? Canceled. Then came the calls. Desperate. Panicked. Begging. Lucas answered them all with the same calm response. "I guess you'll have to start figuring things out on your own. Just like I did." As he hung up the last call, he leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't in a long time. Freedom. Story 2. The House of Lies. If you build your life on deceit, it will collapse. Aunt Karen loved to host grand family dinners in her beautiful home, filled with expensive decor, designer furniture, and the finest dining sets. She loved to brag about her hard work and how she had built a life of success. What she didn't know was that her perfect house was standing on borrowed time. Lucas had been quietly funding 70% of the mortgage, allowing her to live her fantasy. But after years of mockery and cruelty, he decided it was time for a reality check. The moment he cut off the payments, the house became a ticking time bomb. The mortgage went unpaid, late fees stacked up, and within weeks, a foreclosure notice arrived in the mail. The night the family gathered for their usual Sunday dinner, Aunt Karen tried to keep up appearances. But Lucas saw the cracks, her forced smile, the nervous glances at the mail pile. Then as they sat down to eat, a loud knock echoed through the house. It was the bank representative. "This property is in foreclosure. You have 30 days to vacate." Silence fell over the table. The once mocking family now looked at Lucas with wide, pleading eyes. But he simply took a sip of his wine and said, "You always told me I was worthless. Guess that makes this house worth even less." And with that he walked out, leaving them to watch their world crumble. Story 3. The Invitation That Never Came. When you push someone away, don't be surprised when they leave for good. Lucas had always known he was an outsider in his own family. They never truly saw him, never appreciated him. But he stayed, quietly supporting them, hoping one day they'd recognize his worth. That day never came. Instead they mocked him. Laughed at his cheap car, his simple lifestyle. They planned a family vacation to Florida, without inviting him. What they didn't know was that Lucas had been paying for it all along. So he made a choice. He transferred the remaining trust funds to himself. Every penny of his parents' hard-earned money that had been wasted on their selfish luxuries? Gone from their reach. The day they were supposed to leave for Florida, they arrived at the airport, only to find their tickets canceled. Their hotel reservation? Vanished. And Lucas? He was already at a beach resort on the other side of the world. For once, he wasn't the forgotten one. This time they were. Story 4. The Ghost in the Will. The dead may be gone, but their lessons remain. Lucas always felt his parents' presence in his life, guiding him through the years. But after years of quietly supporting his ungrateful family, he knew it was time to honor their memory in a way his relatives never would. He had spent years managing the trust his parents left behind, ensuring his aunt, uncle, and cousins lived comfortably. They never knew where the money truly came from, assuming some government aid had been arranged after his parents' passing. But what they didn't know was that the will had a hidden clause. One that Lucas had just activated. As he sat across from his lawyer, the final papers were signed. The moment the documents were processed, all remaining assets under the trust were redirected toward charity, educational funds for underprivileged children, and community programs his parents had once supported. The family's bank accounts were suddenly empty. Their lavish lifestyle vanished overnight. The house, the cars, even the club memberships, gone. When they confronted him, screaming about their losses, Lucas only smiled. "My parents built their fortune to help people who deserve it." He paused. "I guess that means it was never yours to begin with." As he walked away, he could almost hear his parents whispering in the wind. They would have been proud. Story 5. the missing key. Those who hold the key decide who enters. Lucas had one final responsibility. He was the sole executor of the family estate. The house they lived in, the funds they relied on, even the accounts they assumed were theirs, all were technically under his control. He had kept this power secret. Until now. One morning, the locks on his aunt's house were changed. No key worked. Confused and angry, Aunt Karen called Lucas, demanding answers. "Funny thing about property rights," he said calmly. "It belongs to whoever holds the deed." "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "You don't own the house." "I do." It was true. The trust had been in his name for years, and now that he had removed their access, they were no longer entitled to live there. "You can't do this. Where will we go?" Lucas paused. "I hear Florida's nice this time of year. Too bad you never invited me." He hung up, listening to their panicked voices. For the first time they were the ones locked out. Story 6, The Final Bill. The price of arrogance is always paid in full. For years, Lucas had watched his family live extravagantly while he covered their bills in silence. Expensive trips, designer clothes, golf club memberships, all paid by him. So, he decided it was time they got a taste of reality. Without warning, he sent them an itemized bill. Every dollar he had ever spent on them was listed. Mortgage payments, credit cards, utilities, vacations. Aunt Karen nearly fainted when she saw the total. $367,892. "What is this?" she screeched. "Just the tab for your 5-star lifestyle," Lucas replied. "Since I've been playing the role of the broke nephew, I figured I'd finally settle my accounts." "Lucas, this is insane. We can't pay this." "Exactly." The silence that followed was delicious. For years they had laughed at his modest lifestyle. Now they would have to learn to live one themselves. Story 7, The Table Turned. The one they mock today may be the one they need tomorrow. Lucas always sat at the far end of the table during family dinners, listening as his relatives boasted about their lives. Now for the first time they sat at his table. Their fortunes had crumbled, their debts piled up, and they had nowhere else to go. They came to him, desperate, humbled, begging for help. Lucas listened, sipping his tea. "So," he said finally, "what do you need?" Aunt Karen hesitated, swallowing her pride. We just need a little support," she whispered. Lucas leaned forward. "You mean like the support you mocked me for needing? The kind that made me a worthless nobody?" No one spoke. He let the silence drag. Then, standing up, he pushed a $1 bill across the table. "That's all I can spare." He turned and left. They would finally understand what it meant to struggle. Story 8, The Vanishing Act. Some disappearances are by choice. Lucas had spent years waiting for their approval. For love. For acknowledgement. But after everything they had done, he realized the only thing left to do was leave. One day he simply disappeared. No calls. No texts. No explanations. His apartment was empty. His number disconnected. His email deleted. Panic spread through the family. They had lost their human ATM. They called old friends, former co-workers, anyone who might know where he went. But Lucas was gone. And for the first time they had to stand on their own. Story 9, The Last Laugh. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. Lucas had all the power to ruin his family. To expose their lies, take away their luxuries, and leave them with nothing. But he didn't. Instead he moved on. While they scrambled to maintain their lifestyle, he flourished. He bought a beautiful home, built a thriving business, and surrounded himself with people who truly cared for him. One day years later he ran into Marcos at a grocery store. "Lucas." Marcos looked shocked. "Wow, you look good." Lucas simply smiled. "Yeah. Life's been great." Marcos shifted awkwardly. "Listen man. I know things got weird with the family. Maybe we could." Lucas shook his head. "No hard feelings," he said. "But I don't live in the past anymore." As he walked away he felt lighter than ever. Because the best revenge? Was being happy without them. Story 10, The Legacy. The best way to honor the past is to build a better future. Lucas no longer thought about his family. Instead he focused on his parents' true legacy, helping others. With the remaining funds from the trust, he started scholarships for hardworking students. He funded programs for struggling families. He built something real, something his parents would have been proud of. One day, a struggling young woman approached him. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "Because of this scholarship, I can go to college." Lucas smiled. He had finally found where his generosity belonged. Not in the hands of the ungrateful, but in the hands of those who truly deserved it. Story 11, The invitation that never came, revisited. When you exclude someone, don't be surprised when they move on. Lucas never received an invitation to the family vacation. That's why it was so satisfying when, a week before their trip, every reservation was canceled. The hotel, the flights, even the car rentals, wiped clean. Panic spread through the group chat. Lucas? He was already sitting in first class, sipping champagne on his way to a 5-star resort. They had left him out for years. Now he was the one who left them behind. Story 12, The Empty Seats. People will remember how you treated them when you need them the most. Years later, Aunt Karen fell ill. The family, once filled with laughter and expensive dinners, had dwindled. They were struggling. She sent out invites for a family reunion, hoping to reconnect. But on the day of the event, only 2 people showed up, her husband and Marcos. Lucas? He had moved on. The tables were set. The wine poured. But the seats remained empty. Just like her heart. Story 13. The Last Mortgage Payment. If you never learn responsibility, life will teach it to you the hard way. Aunt Karen assumed the mortgage payments would last forever. She never questioned where the money came from. So when Lucas finally stopped paying, she was shocked when the foreclosure notice arrived. She called the bank, furious. There must be a mistake. Someone has been paying this for years. Yes, ma'am, the bank representative said. But the payer has stopped. You're now 4 months behind. Aunt Karen realized too late. Her life had been built on borrowed time. And time had run out. Story 14. The Blocked Number. Silence is sometimes the loudest response. After everything collapsed, Aunt Karen tried calling Lucas. First to scold him. Then to beg. Then just to hear his voice. Each time the call went straight to voicemail. Until one day it didn't ring at all. Her number had been blocked. She had mocked him for years. Now she was nothing but silence in his world. Story 15. The Family Meeting. Those who rely on lies will one day be forced to face the truth. The family, now struggling financially, called for a serious meeting. They expected Lucas to be there, to fix everything. But when the meeting started, his chair was empty. Instead, a lawyer entered the room holding a folder. I'm here on behalf of Lucas, he said. He won't be attending. The lawyer then distributed legal documents proving Lucas had no more obligations to them. The family sat in stunned silence. Lucas was done. Story 16. The Wallet on the Table. True wealth isn't measured in money, it's measured in dignity. One night, at a restaurant, Lucas ran into Marcos, who was now struggling financially. Marcos sat at a cheap table eating a simple meal, his once lavish lifestyle reduced to scraps. Lucas sat at a reserved VIP section, surrounded by friends and success. Marcos spotted him and hesitated. Then, swallowing his pride, he approached. Lucas, he started, Lucas placed his wallet on the table. Then he pushed it away. I don't owe you anything. He left without another word. Story 17. The Bank Statement. You can't spend what you never truly earned. Brock prided himself on his wealth. The watches, the car, the vacations. Until he checked his bank account. Balance, $0. The reality hit him. Everything he had, every luxury, every trip, had been funded by Lucas. And now, Lucas had taken it all back. Brock stared at the screen. For the first time in his life, he was truly broke. Story 18. The Will That Never Came. If you treat someone like they don't matter, don't expect to be in their future. Years passed. Lucas built a life. His family faded into the past. One day, Aunt Karen heard Lucas had passed away. She rushed to the lawyer's office, expecting something from the will. The lawyer looked at her, confused. I'm sorry, but Lucas didn't include you in his estate. Everything was donated to charity. Karen sat in stunned silence. In the end, she was left with nothing. Because Lucas had left her behind, just as she had done to him. Story 19. The Last Supper. The tables always turn. Years after losing their wealth, Aunt Karen invited Lucas to a simple family dinner. But this time the food was basic. No expensive wine. No lavish spreads. Just leftovers. They sat quietly, ashamed as Lucas ate. Finally, Aunt Karen spoke. We were wrong about you, Lucas. Lucas wiped his mouth, placed his fork down, and nodded. I know. He stood up, left some cash on the table, and walked away. This time they were the ones struggling to afford dinner. Story 20. The True Family. Family isn't about blood. It's about who's there when it matters. After everything, Lucas realized something important. Family wasn't about DNA. It was about love, loyalty, and respect. So he built his own. New friends. Supportive people. A chosen family who saw his worth. One day Aunt Karen reached out, hoping to reconnect. Lucas simply responded, "I already have a family. And you're not in it." Lucas spent years being mocked by his ungrateful family, who believed he was a worthless nobody, while secretly living off his generosity. They laughed at his modest lifestyle, never realizing he was the one paying for their luxuries. But when Lucas had enough, he took back his power. One by one, he cut off their financial support, repossessed the house, blocked their calls, and disappeared from their lives. His family, once wealthy on his dime, crumbled under their own irresponsibility. Yet, instead of seeking revenge, Lucas chose something better. He moved on. He built a successful life, surrounded himself with real friends, and used his money to help those who deserved it. His family, left with nothing, learned too late that arrogance, greed, and entitlement come at a price. Final lesson. The people who mock you today may one day need you. How you respond defines your strength. True success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Not everyone deserves your kindness. Invest in people who value you. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful life lessons.